Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to this Indonesian Forum for the World. That's what one of the presenter told me to address this forum. Let me start because I do like to have more time for question and answer coming from the audience. So with that, I need to introduce myself first. My name is Tjokorda Nirarta Samadhi. I am the country director for WRI Indonesia, and most of you knows me as Koni. So here I am. And I'd like to call the speakers for this forum. First, Pak Mansuetus Alsihanu, or everyone knows popularly as Pak Darto. Please, Pak Darto. Pak Darto is the National Coordinator for Indonesia Palm Oil Smallholders Union. He represents some 48,000 of smallholders. So he's carry a lot of weight here. And the second is Pak Darsono Hartono. He's the President Director of Rimba Makmur Utama, one of the few ecosystem restoration company in Indonesia. And the next, Pak Agus Purnomo. I think he's already an institution in himself, so I don't need to introduce him. He's a Managing Director for Sustainability and Strategic Stakeholders Engagement from Golden Agri Resources. And the fourth is Pak Heri Purnomo. He's a project leader for, let's say that this is a seminal work on political economy of fire and haze in Indonesia. He's from C4. Later on, he's going to give us the setting of this session. And last is Pak Yatna Supriyatna. I saw him somewhere. Right, yeah. Pak Yatna Supriyatna he's a professor. He's a chairman of the Research Center for Climate Change, University of Indonesia. With that, I think I will give the floor to Pak Heri. Pak, please maintain the timing, 10 minutes for you to introduce us with the setting of this topic of today.
Thank you, Pak Koni. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heri Purnomo, as introduced by Pak Koni. I'm the C4 scientist, as well as professor actually at the Bogor Agriculture University in Bogor. And I'm going to share our project result on the political economy of fire and haze, particularly on the root causes. This project funded by DFID UK. And as you aware that for the last 4 months, Indonesia experienced with fire and haze and burned 2.6 million of hectares and cost more than $30 billion of economic losses, and 43 million people exposed to fire, 500,000 people victims of the lung infection. And it's not only there, there's 19 people die because of toxic smoke of haze. This is the first victim of haze in Indonesia. Is Hanum, as a student, 12 years old, 6th grade in Pekanbaru, died on the September 19, 2015. Is among the 19 people who died because of the toxic smoke. And the root causes of this haze, first is tenure. Tenure is a problem in every developing countries, including Indonesia, and also illegal market of land. In many developing countries, we don't have any clear secure of land tenure. And because of those unclarity on the land transactions, illegal land transactions happening, and also as conflict among community and state and corporate. And also as we recognize the bad practices of agriculture and plantation development, as both conducted by the companies or their contractors or workers, as well as communities, everybody. And the third one is land politics, the patronage between the business and government as a bad patronage, as well as the local election is the way to elect new leaders. Sometimes use land as a tool to attract, to persuade people. As facts, the Lapan recognize the Indonesian NASA as he has 2.1 million hectare, actually now is replaced by 2.6, and 70% is non-pit and 30% is pit. And I was actually in Rio, in Sumatra, even in March, the smoke is already there, yeah? But there is no actually strong prevention as conducted by the local government. So my study mostly is in Rio, but also I did GIS analysis in Sumatra and Kalimantan. You see the picture of the hotspots coming from firms NASA. So as a hotspot as a proxy of fire on the ground with 80% of interval confidence. There's land uses and hotspot. It's quite interesting here that if you recognize hotspots is everywhere. And the logging concession is not much, only 4%. Wood plantation, industrial plantation, 23%. Oil palm, also is there a hotspot there, 16%. And also overlap between those land uses, as well as in the community land. Private land is 21%. Also in the forest area, protected and conservation areas, 34%. So fire is not due to the practice of one side, one actor, but it's mostly as all actors involved in the creation of the fire and haze. And one reason why fire is there, because the insecurity of land, because fire provide a benefit. Here's the example of illegal land market in various land uses. Due to open access, unsecure of land, that people can easily claim the land and sell the land. It's there. And per hectare, the value of land per hectare is $665 per hectare. As the benefit enjoyed by many actors, including the group organizers, the local elites, as well as the group members, the land claimant, marketing team, the ocnum of village head, those who slash the forest, cut the trees. Everyone obtain a benefit from the illegal land market. And if it is burned, the value of land increase more than $200 per hectare. You see, fire is provide benefit to some people. So not all people is lost due to fire. Some people get a benefit. And if it is planted with the oil palm, then the value of land is increased. After 3 years, it's becoming $3,000 per hectare. So this is the economy is on the ground. Yeah? It's claiming, burning, and growing oil palm. It's conducted by whom? Actually by those who very, very strong people, powerful people on the ground. It's not smallholder. the farmer organizer, the group organizer own not 2 or 3 hectares, but 100, 200 hectares, even 500, even 1,000 hectares. The investor could be a local, could be a people in Jakarta, the capital, also can be a people in Malaysia and Singapore who invested to the illegal land there. And back to the area as where the hotspot happening, again as distributed to the logging concession, wood plantation, oil palm, overlap a community private land, protection and conservation areas. And if this, I try to divide by area, the number of hotspots per million hectare, we can see that the corporate also, the areas of corporation, including wood plantation and oil palm, is fire there actually. It's not necessarily conducted by the corporation, but in their areas, there are hotspots there. If we mention hotspots as proxy of fire. So in the palm oil, there's a list of those who actually have a hotspot. Most in the palm oil plantation is mostly 68% is by individual. It's not by group. It's more individual. It's not smallholders, individual companies, registered company. It is quite different from the wood plantation. It's mostly by group, by group of large companies. The difference between wood plantation and oil palm is different in terms of hotspot. And I also outlined the connection between hotspot and district election. This is the number of hotspots for the last 15 years, and the black line is the number of the election, district election in Sumatra and the whole Sumatra and Kalimantan. And I found that the hotspot is connected to the year before the Pilkada, local election. This is the function. It's land for food. So it's just a year before Pilkada, fire is increasing because people using fire as a way to persuade people to get their food. It's patronage network. I mentioned that as illegal institutions happening there. As local elite, Cukong, who organize farmers, are the most influential actor in land transaction. As all actors, as they are connected, who are the most important actors? This is call it betweenness analysis, social network analysis. And that one, the example of the Cukong actually is in the court in the Rio. Also, as corporate actors connected to elites at various levels. There are some companies now as suspected by a government. And this is a picture of myself with the president director of April, Tony Wenas, who actually step by step try to make a betterment of their corporations. So as a mid-size as well as the bigger corporation need to work. The project, my project funded by DFID as did expert meeting, conducted the national policy dialogue, communicating to local, national, international mass media, presenting and hearing with the parliament, NGOs and government, facilitating Dompas Village, Rio, doing a canal blocking, as well as establishing Rio-based Forum Negeri Bebas Jerbu to do a collective action in Rio to prevent fire and haze. This is my last slide. Says the question actually, how can land tenure and spatial planning be facilitated and strengthened? Because it's very, very fundamental for developing countries to have secure land tenure. Otherwise, the people is conflicting each other. The second one is, how can rent-seeking behavior through illegal institution, bribery, and patronage be reduced? Sometimes the answer of government is new regulation. New regulations do not answer actually the patronage. It's just another regulation. The third one, how can the poor, not the elites, have access to land to grow oil palm sustainably? How can corporate actors clear their supply chains from fire and minimize internal rent seekers? As good corporate governance is necessary in the corporation. And as the last one, how can non-haze related local leaders, as good leaders at district level, be elected on the December 9? Actually, will be a pilkada, local election in the whole Indonesia, and how to make sure that the good leaders, non-haze related local leaders, be elected. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you, Pak Koni. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Pak Heri. It's precisely 10 minutes. Although if it goes more than that, I would allow him to do so. Well, because this is a really interesting topic to begin with. So the title is it has two concepts intact, which is one is the long-term solution, meaning that we need to deal with the root cause. And Pak Heri already began and shared with us what is the root cause for this fire and haze. Of course, that is based on his research on a few places, but I think it's in general is the current situation there on the ground. And the second is, of course, the private sector's role. Yeah? I mean, we do have sustainability pledge being put forward by many private sectors coming from different sectors or commodities, which is actually a long-term solution for this kind of situation as well. But later on, we can ask the gentlemen here at the front what they would say about that. Yeah. Well, this is a very unfortunate situation, as Pa Heri Purnomo already mentioned, because we are now at the climate negotiation and conference. I think it is right to say that the fire and haze, the recent fire and haze that is happening in Indonesia has increased the level of emission that being produced by Indonesia and made us jump from number 5 to number 4, which is something that is very unfortunate. But at the same time, it should provide us with a momentum actually to go bolder, if you like, in dealing with these issues, which is already 18 years happening. Yeah. So I would probably put that in frame when I ask everyone and the panel to make a statement. First of all, I'd like to ask Professor Yatna Supriyatna. I think it is only right that you would probably represent the government of Indonesia, because because you are coming from the university and you are safe to say something. So this is the question, and I do hope that you use the extensive experience and knowledge that you have to enlighten us here. What are the key roles of the government in resolving forest fires in Indonesia? Please, Pak Yatna.
Thank you, Pak Koni. I hope I wish the representing government, but I have been 15 years, 20 years in the NGOs, so that's easy for me to say. Maybe it's going to be difficult to say on behalf of the government. But Pak Koni, I think the problem that I have been dealing with this forest fire for many 20 years is the government budget. The government budget is to me is a political toward, it's always government budget is not so flexible for deliver to the fire problems. I understand that a few years ago we had a program funded by USAID at the Conservation International to monitor the hotspot. One the hotspot by automatically the SMS going to the local government, to local, but then there is no budget to go to the area of the peatland. Usually the peatland, once you more than 1 hour, they already go somewhere, It's so fast, spread. So usually they cannot do it. So that take time. So they really need to have first thing collaboration with local government. How many people, how many staff from the central government will to extinguish this very big land in Indonesia, especially Sumatra and Kalimantan? It's not enough. Second one, of course, private sector. There should be collaboration with private sector. I always say better than to move from the ego sector to the ecosystem sector, which means that the fire cannot be extinguished by the government. Cannot. Because it's so extensive. As in the peatland. The peatland, once already a fire, they spread naturally. They jump because of this methane. So you cannot blame company, you cannot blame anybody, but there has to be a special. Cannot just like in other countries. Fire in the peatland is so spread easily underneath. It's not in the, so underneath they all go widely to go many different places. So that's the problem. So I again to summarize, I think it's very important that we are working in many different front. And also I think I understand that is the always during the dry season we have to be ready. I visited one company who forest fire. They don't have any fire brigade. They don't have any one single truck to finish. So they said, oh, it's government, should be government come. So, that's the problem. So that's why without collaboration between local government, central government, and private sector, you cannot extinguish the fire. That's Pak Koni. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Yatna. I think I need to add one more question to you, Pak, because you mentioned about the fire that is the smoldering fire, which stays underneath the peatland. So this is also a question on the government policy. Our president mentioned during the speech at COP21, at the opening of the COP, saying that the government of Indonesia will establish agency on peatland restoration. Does that would answer that, the smoldering fire and things related to that?
I certainly support that the establishment of the special task force or agency, whatever, because it's so slow. I can't wait when there's a forest break. It's who is going to be extinguished it? Is it the fire bridge? Is it soldier? Is it who is it? So in terms of soldier has to be working collaboration with the head of the commandant and many other things. So I think I really agree that I support that the very special task force, they understand and prevent before fire is coming, especially in June and July. So we have to mobilize soldier, we mobilize everybody. I think fire can be predicted because it's already, we know how the dry is in some areas. So if you had all over with the scarce resources, I don't think we can do it.
Thank you, Pak Yatna. You mentioned also about the need to collaborate with every stakeholders, including the private sector. So in this case, I would like to ask Pak Agus Purnomo. I know that the company that you represent have a lot of initiative in regard to that. Yeah. Can you give examples of your the company's efforts, and in particular working with smallholders to prevent and resolve this forest fire? Please, 5 minutes, if you will.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Pak Koni. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, thank you, Pak Harry, for highlighting the cases of hotspots and the locations where they are. It's not very often that we are coming to a forum that people is willing to discuss on the big picture and not only accusing the company as the one that create all the havoc. Vis-a-vis the smallholders, Pak Darto is here and he will be able to elaborate on that. But the company, together with the Chambers of Commerce, for the last 2 years, have initiated a program that will help the smallholders to improve their productivity by replacing their crops, replanting it, and in the method of doing it without using fire. That is only started about, finally we have a subsidy from the government by December last year. So the program is almost a year and it's still a small number, only a few hundred hectares, less than 500 hectares. But hopefully with the creations of the CPO fund, there will be much more flexibility on the government side to support the special program for smallholders to increase their productivity as well as to avoid on the use of fires. I don't think the smallholders is the problem, especially if they are already in the field of palm oil, especially if they already have the experience of harvesting it. But it is more of the issue of fires on the about to be developed area that we need to pay attention. And among the big growers, the palm oil growers, we have shared ideas of initiating incentives for villages surrounding our plantations within distance of 3 to 5 kilometers, where the company will provide several incentives, from incentive to use heavy equipment if the local villagers would like to expand their plantations, or not plantations, their crops, they would like to do traditional crops, and also to come up with all kinds of incentive, CSR, employment opportunity, to specifically deal on welfare activity that will not involve fire, from also including patrolling for fires, combating fires. So those programs will start as early as this month and next year. And we are hoping that by the next fire season, at least within 3 to 5 kilometers, there will be much less hotspots. The question then becomes, what happened beyond 5 kilometers? I think that is the big elephant in the room that we need to discuss. This is not something that the company can work on its own. It definitely a huge task for the new agency on peatland if they are only having to work by themselves. So I think this is very important to look as an opportunity to collaborate. All actors, the big growers, the medium-sized growers, the university, the NGOs, and the international players to work on areas that the statistic that have been mentioned by Pak Harry shows clearly the spread of fires, and most of them will be a recurring fires. Right? It's not a one-time in 10 years, but it will be caught in fires every year. So if we can focus on the area beyond 5 kilometers of plantation boundaries, the area where there are peatlands, they are not, in the perceptions of the general public, is not being used, so there is an opportunity to open up it into all kinds of plantations, then that should be the focus. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Agus. I would like to move next to the smallholders. But I guess before I really ask the question to Pak Darto, I would like you to explain for the benefit of the audience here, what is or which smallholders that you represent, Pak Darto, please.
Okay, thank you, Pak Koni. SPKS is oil palm smallholders. My member is independent smallholders and plasma smallholders. And the majority, my member is independent smallholders, and around 60% of 14,800 smallholders. And my definition for smallholders is under 25 hectares, and they manage directly. And however, the definition of smallholders on the regulation in Indonesia is under 25. My criteria for my member is manage directly. Yeah. I'm very appreciate invite me to talk in here in this forum because many times before we go to here, smallholders get blamed on the forest fire case in Indonesia. Smallholders were and will be in difficult position when it comes to the fire outbreak. Many fines were pointed silty and quickly to us. As you know, using fires is the cheapest method to prepare plantation. When you have no money, you go to cheapest way. A good and affordable financing access will significantly improve this. For the example, if they make land clearing, they must be need money around 7 million rupiahs. And the problem is the smallholders, they don't get access money by bank. That's a problem for me. And after that, regarding about the fire and haze in Indonesia, this is not only related on oil palm, also other cash crop. Because the food crop farmers, they don't get benefit, and they convert the other crops, and they convert to palm oil. And the key factors is the farmers, the food crop farmers, they really do not get assist and protection by governments, national and local governments. We also need legal certainty on land boundaries so that we can define the go and no-go zones for smallholders. We need better mapping of our smallholders, otherwise we don't know who burn and where it is burning. Maybe after mapping you can see that it is not actual smallholders since they have more than 25 hectares. We appreciate our President, Pak Joko Widodo, and Ibu Menteri, Environment and Forestry, instruction to no more development, no more burning in pit area. We truly believe that we must address the lack of support for smallholders. And this clear instruction from our leaders will slowly but surely eliminate the habit of burning our forests and pits as practiced both by the plantation and forestry company and us. Please rest assured that we are committed to support program implementation and in monitoring progress in the ground and to eliminate use of fire. SPKS will also cooperative with company. We believe in an integrated village approach, including for fire. If company and governments can provide incentive to village when they are free of fire, it will be attractive for smallholders and village community. But it is important that incentive is used for fire prevention programs so we can keep in going. Thank you, Pak Koni.
Thank you, Pak Darto. I would like to use this opportunity to add more data, if you like, so that we are clear what is the smallholders and which one is not. Yeah. The statistics said that around 5.4 million hectares are managed by smallholders. But this is not as described or defined by Pak Darto. Pak Darto definition of smallholders is less than 25 hectares, but it has to be managed by themselves. Yeah? So it is not managed through other cooperation or by other parties, but it is managed by the farmer himself. So that is the definition. And among SPKS member, they manage 400,000 hectares. So beyond that, it is not the smallholders that Pak Darto represent. I think this is, has to be clear because as Pak Heri mentioned within his presentation, there's a middleman, if you like, yeah? The one who to get the biggest benefit out of this situation. Now, let me go to Pak Darsono Hartono. He's also famous, I think. And can you give examples of community-based forest fire prevention efforts that have been established in and around your concession? This is important because this is, I think, the real example of things that is positively happening on the ground. Please, Pak Darsono.
Thank you, Pak Koni. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Darsono Hartono. I know I have a lot of familiar faces, but just want to give you a little background. You know, I started this project, which is the ecosystem restoration project in peatland in 2007. This is we at that time, me and my partner Rezal Kusuma at Maja realized how important peatland should be conserved and be restored if there is you know, a peatland that has been degraded. So. But both of us believe that in order to, you know, to do this effectively, we have to have a very good, strong foundation. So, you know, the past, it took us literally, I think since 2008 when we put an application, we got our license in 2013. The area is 200,000 hectares in Central Kalimantan. But I think throughout that journey, before we got our license and even a year and a half now after we get our license, we actually have achieved a lot in terms of doing things that we think that is good foundation for the project. So we have at least to answer the first question is how can, the tenure issue. We have managed to get almost all participatory mapping done in all villages, so to clarify the issues. We have actually done a lot of village planning. So this is a very bottoms-up village planning, and the company have signed 13 MOU with all the villages in terms of activities that we have because of the license that we carry, and all that, particularly in the alternative livelihood program that we have. So the question now is, how can we be effective doing prevention? So the key is, the word is prevention. And the reason why we are doing it so well is because, one, I think the most important ingredient why we do so well is because we have trust. Trust among the companies and communities. Without trust, it's very hard to do prevention. That's a very important thing. And in order to build trust, I am, as an owner of a company, we go really to the villages. And we are very transparent. I give them my handphone number, we talk, and those are things that we build trust, and over the past 5 years, that's how we build trust. So I think, why did we do it well? Because I think one, for sure, is we know that this El Nino is coming. We have, a year ago, we sit down and we say, this is going to be El Nino year, let's do something about it. So the prevention is very important. Not only that, the prevention have to involve the community. It has to be very bottoms up. To point, we plant this, 9 months ago with, 6 villages where we basically have identified as a high-risk area. Just for information, our area is about 100 kilometers north to south, 30 kilometers west to east. There is, in the two-river system, there is a canal being cut from east to west that we know that during this dry season, it will eventually dry up. That will be very prone to fires. So, I think on the high of the dry season, the water is literally just, less than like this. Well, during the rainy season, it's going to be like this. So you know that this is coming. But we have worked with these 6 villages involving all the communities, and we are transparently and socializing it to a point where this is important. Prevention is much better than putting fire out. So I think that's how we very effectively manage this year. If you look at not only the prevention, we also create basically the fire brigades team. We know that not only for sure there will be a hot spot in the area. So working with these 6 villages involving up to 200 communities. So it's about awareness. It's about awareness to communities. It's about building trust, and it's about transparency. So I think those are the key effort to actually prevent fires. And it's going to take time. We have done it because we have done so well the past 5 years by building trust. But I think from the private sectors, we have to go beyond whatever we can. Just to give you an example, even some of these villages, all of these villages outside our concession boundary. It's not even in our, certain areas, So majority of that is, it's just trying to make sure that this is not going to happen to our concession, but we have to look at the area first. What are the high risks? There's no, it's not like we're doing a 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers, or 10 kilometers. It's really going through the system, the ecosystem itself, where there's 2 river system. So we have to cover all, whatever inside our area in this 2 river system. That's how we manage to do it effectively, I guess.
Thank you, Pak Darsono. So prevention is important. That is the message coming from Pak Darsono as well as Pak Agus Purnomo. But there is also the concept that is being worried by Pak Yatna because our government budget is not actually designed to accommodate prevention, I think. Yeah. So with that, I would like to open up the floor. We have 45 minutes, which is quite ample time for you to ask questions to those 5 gentlemen up front. And I will take a question from ladies first, right? Because we already have 6 gentlemen up front. Anyone? Yeah, one. Is there any more ladies? There, Gita, it's just over there. Yeah, 2. Can I get one more ladies to ask question? Nope. Okay, so one more. That gentleman over there. Yeah, he's a gentleman, Okay, go ahead. You can start by stating your name, your affiliation, and if possible, direct your question to whom.
Okay. My name is Dorothea from Fauna Flora International. I'd like to thank you all for your talks, very interesting. My question is very simple, and it's directed to Darsono. It's about whether you have in place similar preventative actions for the second wave of fires that is predicted for February. And yeah, how are you going about organizing that, if that's the case? Thanks.
Good. Do not forget that scientists predict that March there will be another El Nino. So bear that in mind when you ask question. Next.
Okay. Hi, my name Nur Amalia. I am from Multi-Stakeholder Forestry Program 3 in Indonesia. My question also for Pak Darsono. You mentioned about the participation of communities to manage the area. Can you explain a little bit about the participation of women in this whole process, especially for the prevention of fire and other management of this area? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you. My name is Panut Hadisiswoyo. I'm from Orangutan Pembebasan Center and Lost Ecosystem Alliance in Sumatra, Indonesia. All of you, and especially Pak Heri, actually didn't mention about law enforcement as the root causes. So I think it's the root of the root causes of the fires problem in Indonesia. So how would you agree with that statement that law enforcement, land tenure, everything that you mentioned, actually because law is not really well enforced. And second is about accountability and transparency to Pak Agus and GAR. How would you elaborate more that your company, GAR, actually would be more transparent in terms of your suppliers and your hotspots that can be actually put forward in terms of next step to anticipate more fires, and that is really important for the society to know who actually the actors they're actually active on the ground, but also at the same time having so much problem on the ground that not really addressed properly. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will not summarize the question. I think everyone already jot down what is the question is. Please, Pak Darsono, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think, for this preparation, just to give you an example, after we start having the rainy seasons, the team have put basically the report. What have we done? What have we done well? What are the things that we are improving? And I think even the fact is we got a lot of equipments just in terms of we make sure that we have at least a good fire mitigation team, and we continue our effort in terms of the prevention. So you have to let the communities know that usually typically January, February is not a dry season, but this might be. So the good thing is we have a lot of positive feedback and effort that we have done the past 6 to 9 months. So I think we just have to continue, whether it's coming 9 months from now, 6 months from now, 4 months from now. I think our team are ready to do it. I guess regarding the involvement of women, just to give you an example. So after we get our license in 2014, we start doing this village planning program. Village planning program really involving from the community base, and when we sign an MOU, which is about 12 months later after the whole participatory village planning program, we actually have certain condition. So just to give you an example, the condition that we have is it has to be a institution where they receive money. So when I say that we have signed 13 MOUs, actually this past year the company have allocated about 1.3 billion rupiah for the 13 villages. So approximately 100 million per villages for basically livelihood programs. But with that, we also create and help them to create the institution. That the institution cannot be, the village head cannot be part of the institution or any of the officials. Then it has to be a women involvement. So we make a condition, it has to be women involved, there have to be youth involved. So all these things were already designed from working with the local NGO, because we know the importance of involving women in this process. So that's.
Pak Agus, please, can you add from your perspective in regard to prevention? Thank you, Pak.
The specific questions to me is about supply chains, about the issue of the potential that within our supply chains there will be problematic companies or problematic growers who are using fires in opening up their land. by December, by this month, our company will have 100% traceability to the mills. Definitely, the mills that we are sourcing will not be the problematic mills. The problem with that commitment is we have limited visibility beyond the mills, because those mills are not owned by us. They are independent mills, and they are sourcing from all kind of plantations, from independent small growers to companies, various companies, big and medium and small. So what we've been asking, even today, we are only getting about 98% of mills that we are buying from that agree to give their data. We still have 2 or 3% that are reluctant to give. So by December, if they don't want to give their information, we will look for another mills. We will not buy from mills who will not be willing to give some level of visibility to their operation. But if we want to be transparent, traceable to the level of trees, there will be a lot of additional efforts that need to be made and a lot of collaboration that need to be developed. Because we can employ consultant, but the consultant will need to have consent from the mills and consent from others. They cannot force it. It's not ours. So at the most, the power that we have is a B2B arrangement. If you are willing to be transparent, then we will continue having business with you. If you are not, sorry, we will look for another. We have proven to be able to do that in the last 6 months. But those policies also creating a lot of problems. We got a lot of hits of not buying from one company and still continuing buying from the others. So we need to have a much bigger meeting that involve all kinds of parties, from the government, who should be the leader, the coordinator, to the provincial and district governments, who are the license issuers, and to the NGOs who knows the people, who have reports that are very much given additional transparency on the debate, and also to the companies operating in the supply chain. Once we have that meeting organized, then we can come up with some common goal that from that we will be able to execute. The intention is strong, the commitment is strong, but it will not be entirely up to us to do it. They have also to be involved. They're willing to be part of it.
Well, Agus, can I add a question? Is that the common practice that is there within the 5 IPOP companies, if you can answer that?
The 5 companies. The 5 companies that signed a pledge September last year in New York are actually individually, they have policy, corporate policy, that reflects what I just said. All of them have no fire burning, no use of fire in their operation. They are also not developing on high conservation value, high carbon stock forest, and also not developing on peat at any depth. So they will continue to do that with or without the pledge, because it's their own policies. So, but the problem is those 5 big companies that you mentioned is actually only 10% of the planted areas of the total palm oil plantation.
Okay.
So in terms of size, actually the group that is a bit famous and notorious at the same time, including myself, is not that big. We're only 10%. If you're talking about the oil that we buy, yes, it's several times more. But when we buy from somebody else, it has to be a consensual agreement.
Right.
We have to be agree he is willing to sell and we are willing to buy. If he's not willing to sell, there's nothing that we can do.
Thank you, Pak Agus. So I will spare the question on prevention, because you're already very great in answering that. But you mentioned about by December, there's a deadline for your supply chains. How do the public know that it will happen, Pak?
All of our supply chains are posted in our website.
Okay.
The NGOs can check. They can go to the field. What we probably still vulnerable is we don't know that particular mill somehow later being bought by a group that has also a subsidiary working on Papua, for example. That is something that we cannot know before. But once we know that situation, then we will engage and discuss with them. Please don't cut the forest, because that's not in line with our corporate policy. And after the dialogue, then we can come up to some agreement, agree to disagree, or agree to continue without creating environmental destruction.
Thank you, Pak Agus. Now you can have your drink. Pak Harry, there's one last question that is coming from the floor, which is on law enforcement. Please, Pak.
Yep, we didn't answer actually who the bad guys of fire and haze. Seems everyone is a good guys, yeah. But in Indonesia, we believe, also from the statement of government, 90% of fire is man-made fire. It's man-made fire. People who make fire, burn fire. Who they are, the question is. If seems everyone is good, small holders good, large group is good. Who actually the bad guys? Some Indonesians are smiling. They know who the bad guys. So it's connected to your question, on the law enforcement. Yes, we have law enforcement, but to me it's not very effective. As fire is happening almost 18 years. It's happened. It's 20 years or first time. 20 years. It's almost every year. Next year we'll have another fire. Of course, maybe we can reduce. But we need to understand who actually the bad guys in order to take law enforced. Because law cannot be put in nobody. Because and now in Indonesia some is suspected from the smallholder, mid-size, and also from the companies. As I mentioned in my presentation, several companies are suspected. And why law is not really enforced? Because as I mentioned in my questions, there's patronage between the businessmen in every scale with the government that hinder the capacity of government to rule the law. So as fire is man-made, it's happening for 20 years. We need to realize that this is the situation. And also as related to the government budget, do you think that our local government is so stupid not to put money on their budget if fires every year occur? Or it is by design not to have a budget to stop fire. Some provincial government almost have no budget, but the fire is happening for 20 years. And I don't believe that the government is so stupid. So what I suspect, there is people try to influence the government not to have enough budget to stop fire. Because you know why? Because fires benefit to several people. It's not everybody lost due to fire. As I mentioned that every hectare you can, if you burn the land, it's $300 for every hectare. Imagine if you have $2 million, it's $6 billion of US dollar, benefiting to several people at the cost of 43 million people. So fire is some is loss because of fire, and some is got a benefit. And they play the game, influencing the policy at the district, provincial, even at the national level. That's why there's not much money on preventing fire. It's not it's not because we don't know. I don't believe that a lack of knowledge on fire. Because research on fire is already 25 years. As fire happening already 20 years. just because it's the incapability of the government, because there's many stakeholder influence, just make the government is not effective to stop fire. And now, as you mentioned, is in March, the El Niño will come, and there's nobody on the ground. Nobody is developing canal blocking as suggested by the president. It's because no budget coming from the government. We wait until the next year budget. So it's just like waiting for another fire. And also from the companies, there is no direct instruction from the ministry to develop the canal blocking. Just speed matters. We are just too slow. Yeah? It's too slow. And I don't believe we are too slow because it happens accidentally, because people try to influence the processes. Thank you, Pak.
Pak Yatna, you want to add?
I just want to, Pak Hadi, about this law enforcement again. I think maybe at the public forests, especially national park, there are a lot of them is because of due to a budget. It's you know that in the protected area is only $5 per hectare compared to US about $70 and many others. So most of those forest fire in the protected areas and national park is due to encroachment. That was the law enforcement was really not really enforced in the protected area. While in the private land is really, of course, concession is really responsible. But I think if we can get this protected area, because that was the area where orangutans, where rhinos, elephants, and all those species very important in Sumatra and Kalimantan, both are very high, they call it key biodiversity areas. So if they're lost, we lost forever. So I really believe that law enforcement, I agree with you that we really need, especially in the area of protected area. So we need that. The second one, I really push that, you know, the health issue, we have not really, because that may weaken up call for everybody. This is really very dangerous situation because not somebody already died, but recently our study that the even particle matters 2.5 is really high, almost triple, 4 times of the used to be. So that really we have to think about how do we more than the holistic approach. And again, the budget instrument is very important to the protected area, but also to the local government. I really agree with you that yes, they know, yes, they have, but whether they distribute it or they work, that's really a different question. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you. Wow. Well, I need 3 more, so Pak Rauf and Ibu and you. I like you because you're smiling all the time. So, go ahead, Rauf.
Thank you, Pak Koni. My name is Rauf Prasojo from UNDP Indonesia. I have a question. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Riau, right outside of Pekanbaru in Pelalawan, and I was asking a question about smallholders to a smallholder about fires, and they said that, you know, a lot of it is also a free rider problem in terms of, you know, you see a lot of smoke, and I actually also need to burn, so, you know, if I do a little bit of burning now, it won't really matter. So one question that I have, something that I also hear about fire prevention and kind of solutions of how this not to occur again in the future is incentives. I know definitely there's the perpres on peat, but also a lot of people talk about incentives to give to smallholders or whoever is doing it. I know that a lot of the maps or the data that C4 gave was a lot on like concessions, but a lot of then concessions will say that it's encroachment for smallholders, and it's a debate there. But I was wondering if there were any kind of incentives that you could propose to to stop this from happening? And you did talk about the price of clearing land is definitely more expensive, and independent smallholders don't have access to. But I was thinking of that there were others that perhaps been proposed, and I know that here, especially from C4, UI, and WRI, have looked at this probably and given perhaps advice to the ministry or even the president himself directly. And so I was wondering if you've had any advice that you give him directly, and you would like to see that the government, the current administration, is doing or hasn't been doing right now to create these incentives.
Thank you. I will not allow to answer that. Ibu, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Smita Noto Susanto from the Multi-Stakeholder Forestry Program. I'd like to direct my questions to Pak Heri and Pak Yatna. I was intrigued with your last statement, Pak Heri, and I've listened to your presentation about the political economy of the haze twice already. The last statement that you made, that you believe that there is some actors that have influenced local government to not allocate budget for prevention. I'm just curious whether you can name that actor, because that would really, be enlightening for all of us. Because in your study, if you look at the previous map that you showed before, it shows that the most important actor at the grassroots level is the farmer groups. Now, I doubt that these farmer groups are that influential agency that you mentioned before. I think it should be even beyond local government, or if it's within the local government, who could that be? And then going to the solutions that the gentleman over here was talking about law enforcement, Pak Yatna. What if the law enforcement agency that we are relying to enforce these regulations are the ones who are actually, I'm just speculating, Pak Heri, are the ones who are influencing to either prevent the government from allocating the budget or even in it for the burning. Because, burning is not only to clear lands, but sometimes it's also to cover illegal loggings. Because, even during the process of fighting the forest fires, the police even found, or maybe they were even involved in the activity of a lot of logs being transported out, and there are traces of fires. So, there is also that possibility. And we all know that, security officers, whether military or police, are always, behind illegal loggings in the past.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about that. And lastly,
it's getting hot up here.
Relating to Rauf's question, concerning solution, Pak Yatna, I think there has been also some talk about providing fiscal incentives for local government. So it's not just imposing punishment, but also providing what sort of fiscal incentive that the national government can provide, given that most local government in Indonesia are still 80% dependent on national government transfers. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman over there.
My name is Nils Madsen, and I'm working with the Swedish forestry model, trying to adapt it to buffer zones investment outside the Loiser ecosystem in Aceh. And we are a number of Swedish people from the forestry sector who have been working since back in the 90s in the Sumatra, and we've been following it. Well, we have this, and my question is, crazy idea or can try? And the idea is this Swedish forestry model, the bioenergy is very important. From 1990 to present times, even though it's more expensive, we have still had growth with 60%, greenhouse gases decreased by 20%, and we also got rid of haze that we used to have in the cities when we were burning in wood ovens by implementing combined heat and power, thanks to biomass. Can you imagine all the value of that biomass, that energy that is going up to the air? And if you're speaking $300 per hectare, if you take that biomass, collect it, put it on the roadside. That's very cheap biomass by Swedish standards, where farmers 100 kilometers away from the power plants collect it and then transport it and burn it, and we pay a premium compared to coal. These wood pellets, they can be made from this biomass. You're making incentives to everybody. Don't burn the biomass, it's value. And we consumers, here in Europe, we pay a higher price for renewable energy. And these wood pellets that you see here, they can be easily burned in coal-powered power plants. Yes, the consumers, but maybe I think the consumer in Singapore would be prepared to pay a higher price if he knew not only that it's renewable energy, but it's collected by poor people who is earning extra money in a region that's spitting out haze to Singapore. Is that something we can try, or is it crazy?
Thank you, Pak. So I hope your answer would be much shorter than the question. Pak Heri, go ahead.
Yeah, advice to for smallholders, give a land right. So my question, my suggestion actually to strengthen the spatial planning. Because for instance in Rio, in Central Kalimantan, there is no spatial plan, the updated spatial plan. Yeah, we can talk incentive, give some funding, flexibility, but the most important for smallholder is land, the security of land. Now, as some of them grow oil palm in the forest area, in the state land, so how can we expect them grow sustainably the oil palm if their land is illegal? It's illegal. So I have a question actually from the head of plantation in Rio Province, Pak Muhibul Basar. Is 1.3 million hectare of plantation without the proper permit. Is in the forest area. 1.3 million of oil palm in Rio without proper permit. How can we expect them growing the oil palm sustainably if the land is illegal? And mostly by small and mid-size without proper permit, yeah. And some, of course, with the proper permits, not all smallholder. So the most valuable incentive for smallholders is right to land, to access the land, to legalize of their land. We can discuss. We need to move forward with the spatial planning processes. And the second question is the name of those who influence the budgeting. Of course, we have a data in our research. Imagine that the Chukong, the elites, is actually the head of a political party at the local level. Of course, they will influence the decision-making process at the local level in order to secure their illegal oil palm. So it's very easy. If there is money to stop fire, because they use fire to prepare the oil palm, and at the same time he's the head of political party there. How can they support that kind of money to stop fire? So there's a lot of politics happening on the ground. As I mentioned, there is a connection between local election with the fire. A year before local election, the fire is usually higher than the other years. So we suspect there is a land politics, land for food. Yeah. Food me, I give access to the land. Even sometimes not their land, but the state land, or even the company's land is not secured by the company, can be given to the voters. So this is the situation on the ground. As again, 90% of fire is man-made fire. Just burn the land to renew their plantation as well as to prepare for the new plantation. Thank you.
Thank you. The issues of legality is key for that is according to Pa Heri, and I think I'd like to use this opportunity because I'm the moderator to ask Pa Darto, of course. Yeah. What is the sort of legality that the smallholders within the SPKS organization? What's some sort of legality? Thank you.
The definition of the legality. I think on the regulation has described about this point, such as STDB, Surat Tanda Daftar Budidaya. I don't know if after that SPPL, Surat Pernyataan Kesanggupan Pengelolaan Lingkungan Hidup, and land certificate.
Okay. So that is the condition that can be considered as legal for smallholders.
Yes.
Thank you. So is there any response to the crazy idea coming from our Swedish friend? If not, I will ask. Okay, Pak Darsono, go ahead.
I think my journey, when I started the Katingan project 7 years ago, we are concentrating on restoration and conservation. But I think the fact is, we have built a very strong social capital. Then we start thinking about production too, because we're gonna. The fact is, there's no carbon market, there's no carbon credit, there's no REDD+ yet. So we start being creative, and we actually start thinking about going to the basic of food, water, energy now. So in the northern part of our area, there are degraded land that is non-peat, that we're actually looking to do some biomass project. That we are talking about pallet using some kind of high grass. We do pallet like that. I think we will talk with a Japanese company right now. So actually, we try to combine that because it actually will give, source of income for the communities. We provide jobs, and these are the things. As a company that is willing to be transparent, we will have a very robust beneficiary system for the people. So yes, I think we are looking. We will, of course, we'll be happy to talk about the Sweden, technology. But I think, and then the next thing that we do is we try to look into actually power plant. We're trying to build a solar power plant in our area, in a 5 megawatt solar power plant on grid and off grid, and also as well going to the community. So these are the things that as a project developer, we start thinking. Of course, there's the issue of health that we have to help for communities, education, but also have to be core of, the production side too. So.
Thank you. So I ask 3 more. This time I would like non-Indonesian person, John and you and that guy. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Pak. And this question is also for you.
Oh.
In that you have a lot of historic involvement in issues related to mapping and planning. My question for all of you is, now that the government seems to have recognized the issue related to fires because of the health crisis that's been caused, enforcement is going to be key to ensure that prevention is the solution to burning in the future. But I think that everybody is probably fairly pessimistic about the next fire season, which starts arguably at the end of January. And looking back to '97 could be even worse than the last 3 months. So 2 aspects to this that I'd like your opinions on. It would seem to me that the longer term solution is the one map solution, so that there is a definitive source of information that can be used to actually prosecute people who are, so there's no overlapping. Harry pointed out that well over 100 of the hotspots in the graph that he showed were on overlapping areas. The one map seems like a longer term solution to provide the basic substrate for how things could be enforced. But I'd like to also ask you to consider what companies like GAR have done and the corporate commitments to sustainability that can actually be an enforcement mechanism in and of themselves. That by having buying force that would restrict the production from lands that have been inappropriately cleared is in fact potentially a better enforcement mechanism than that which government can undertake.
Next, Pak Faris, silakan.
Faisal Parish, Global Environment Center, and working with the ASEAN Secretariat on the ASEAN program on sustainable management of peatland ecosystems. I think that everyone knows by now that to stop the haze is relatively simple. We just have to stop the peat fires. More than 90% of the haze is coming from fires on peatland. Is this what? Yeah. And how to stop the significant, serious fires in peatlands is to re-wet the peat. So those basic things are known. How to go about do that, and how to do it in a rapid way, and how to do it in the right way. I know the president said on Monday they're going to create a new agency. Well, creating new agency will normally take 1 or 2 years and have some big contracts to some big contractors to do something, and will probably could, on the worst case, end up with worse problem than now. We've seen what big money does to the Mega Rice project. 4,600 kilometers of canals dug and abandoned and 500,000 hectares of fire with the Public Works Ministry. And if someone takes the same approach to blocking up the drainage systems in Indonesia for the peat, that will create a similar problem and a long time frame. What is needed, I think, is a devolved approach with multiple partners, multiple stakeholders. The best people who are most rapidly able to block up canals are probably, if you can get local people and also some of the companies, responsible companies who have the equipment and so on, they can be rapidly put in place. In fact, the best people who can block up many small canals tomorrow are all the illegal loggers. They're the best. They can do it in a day. They have the technique in less than 24 hours. They put a log across a drain. They put a tarpaulin sheet. The water's raised up. They've done it for years. That's how they float their logs out from the forest. So they can be deployed. That technology, those people can be deployed very easily in thousands of villages to go and block and raise the water levels in the next month while the rain is still here. And we can do that on a large scale. And wherever it's been shown to do large scale, raising the water table, the risk of fire substantially drop. So if we want to do it, it's not going to be by a central government, a new agency which will take a year to appoint the Director General and get going. We need to rapidly work. And we're only going to do that if we can get the companies, such as yourselves, the 5 IPOP members, the other companies, the HTEs, if they can all allocate some resources to be used in the next 6 weeks, get people out on the ground. We already know the hotspots, we know the high fire risk areas. We can deploy people out there and get as many canals, drains. We have them all mapped, we have the satellite images, we know the sites, and get those blocked, get the water raised up, and see if we can stop this massive fire in the next 6 months. As I said, it's likely to be worse than the last 3, so we have to really take action. And can the companies in the panel and others really respond? And the suggestion, is there a magic way of a new type of agency which can work with multiple stakeholders and get resources out to them quickly? It's a miracle if it can be done in the first month of a government financial year to get resources out. Maybe the last month of the financial year, before December 31st, we better get the money out now in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take that as a note of input to the government. Thank you. The last gentleman, please.
Hi, Shane McGrath from the Loisa Ecosystem Alliance. I'd like to raise my question under the context of this being a global climate conference where we're all working together in the means of creating solutions for a more carbon-friendly world that, as years go by and our children inherit, and highlight the point that the vast majority of the carbon emissions from deforestation is not taking place in the transport sector of transporting palm oil from the mill to the refinery to the market, but it is in that critical first phase from the forest floor to the mill. So within that context, I would acknowledge some of the work that the IPOP members have been taking, especially Wilmar and Musimas, and I guess just through absence of being on the panel, Pa Agus, could you further elaborate an increasing intention to identify that critical gap? Because I understand you can say from the mill, it's no longer our problem, yet we've all come here to Paris to provide a solution. So is there any more info there, please?
Thank you. So I think all directed to Pak Pungki. Go ahead, Pak. Please be short, Pak, because we only have 5 minutes to go.
Oh, no.
On the last questions, you're right, especially when we're talking about new plantations. Unfortunately, the 5 companies that you mentioned, they are no longer expanding. So on the issue of now to the futures, the problem is shifted from these big 5 companies to the other companies who keep on expanding. On the greenhouse gases, the emissions from the land, the LULUCF up to the mills, if we use the RSPO standard of 2005, most of the plantations of these big 5 are actually developed before 2005. So in terms of real calculations, most of their plantations are carbon free, carbon neutral. Because their next level of emission is on the mills. And when you use methane capture, your emission reduce 50%. It will be below 500 ton per 500 ton carbon equivalent per product volume. So if you add into the absorption and then the maintenance of the peatland that is not being developed, the HCV, HCS, my company, for example, we have 70,000 hectares of land comprised of HCV, HCS, and peatland that we are not touching. If we include them in the functions of storage, then all our upstream is neutral. But then it's a different case when we go to the independent third-party suppliers. Answering to your questions, in the area that the gentlemen are concerned, Loser, they are supplying to a number of refineries that are based in Belawan area, surrounding Belawan, right? The big 5 have 1 or 2 refineries there, big one. However, there are 13 refineries that are not part of the big 5. So the question is, can you engage those 13? Because they're definitely not part of us. They're selling it directly. And with the more stringent of procurement policy, the big 13, that number of 13 will be more, because a lot of problematic sources will look into those refineries. So law enforcement become a bit more complicated because the market is actually not all of it are within the control of the big 5. What else? The peatland? Yes, vis-a-vis the commitment to put resources, equipment, financial incentives, whatnot. Yes, I can assure you, we are ready. We just wait for the government to announce the policy and making it mandatory. We will be 100% support that. Why we need the government to be in the front? Because actually, legally, we are only allowed to operate within our concession. If fire is happening outside, owned by somebody else, we go there and put it off, we will be liable. But we are doing it anyway. So taking that risk, and if it's further, then the liability is increased. So we need the government to be the coordinator and telling us, go and put off that fires, go and stop the canals, and if it's within our technical ability, we'll do.
Thank you, Pak Agus. Well, I'm not going to conclude this session. Yeah, I think because everyone already get a clearer idea of what is going on here and what is the long-term solution that we have. John from the audience saying about the one map, which is a good thing to start the process of law enforcement. That is the long-term solution. The legality of lands, that is also a long-term solution, and the commitment of the private sector is also part of the long-term solution. So with that, I conclude this session. Thank you for participating on this forum. Good night.